Okay, we're live. Presumably, within the next 30 seconds, we'll be also live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube on Mouth Media Network's channels. So, hello to anybody who's tuning in. This is Lateral People Lunch, which is going to be a series of interviews that we do kind of around lunchtime during the week. Rob and I have been working together for a long time, and we like to have interesting conversations with interesting people, and we don't necessarily like to have a plan when we start those conversations. So this will be a little bit off the wall, and to kick that off, we have an amazing off the wall person, Lindsay Bowen, who is a lawyer, and we know through the podcasting space, he's a lawyer for podcasters and other artists. Hi, Lindsay.
Hello. Now, I see in this very detailed script you've written for me that it's my turn to talk, so I'm going to do
that. Exactly. The more you plan, the better it goes, right?
Yeah. Loose preparation is a beautiful thing. The looser, the better, I suppose, or not. Don't give yourself too much of a plan that you don't actually do it, which is my other problem. Yeah, thanks. We have known each other since the early days of Mouth Media Network, which feels like one version of the early days of podcasting. You know, never say you're a podcasting OG because there's somebody else who's older than you for sure.
Oh yeah.
But we were, we're middle G's, I think. But I have had a really interesting year, and talking to you guys at the Lateral People Conference in October kind of crystallized a little bit of my thinking, which is I like to do a lot of different things, and I want to set up my life so that I can do them all, not as side hustles, not as kind of a secret little hobby or philanthropy that doesn't maybe make sense with the main way I make my money or the main way I introduce myself to people or whatever. Just kind of do it all at once, and it's been pretty exciting. So I don't know to what extent you guys have spurred me to be more lateral, but I'm about as lateral as I can handle right
now. Multilateral, though. I mean, we
Sure.
cut that word off just so that it's a shorter name, but if you're only moving laterally, you're not really moving. So
that's true.
Multilateral thinkers, yes.
It is multilateral. I think of lateral thinker, as opposed to linear thinker, I guess.
Yeah.
And for years, there was just this giant, maybe not giant. There were some people every once in a while who just didn't seem to get me, and I didn't seem to get them. And I would explain things I thought fairly. In a fairly robust and clear way, and they would just look at me quizzically. And I realized this, I don't want to demonize anybody, but those folks just don't think the same way as I do. Those folks are linear thinkers, and lateral thinker is what's out there in pop psychology maybe. But yeah, I like multilateral thinker. Certainly feel like I have a multilateral life right now. So that's the pandemic is of course not over. But the giant changes, it's made in everybody's life has kind of, I realized that the way I was living in some ways during the pandemic is the way I wanted to keep living. That never particularly wanted to go to an office for any length of time again. Really enjoy being able to do work that I'm proud of, that's pretty high level, that's important to people, and 30 minutes later be on the Hudson River in a kayak. Like that's, and sure, that sounds like just privilege and semi-retirement. It's not. It's work and recharging and going back to work and everything else, and making trade-offs between do you want to throw yourself into one thing and risk burning yourself out, or do a lot of cool shit.
Yeah. I think so. One of the things that kind of showed up for me was that you don't maybe move quite as fast when you're doing a lot of different things, but everything moves. And it's being in that space of like, I like kind of shepherding cats forward along a meandering path. It fits in my head. Earlier today, I was wrapping birthday presents for a fake birthday, and now I'm on mic, and we're talking. And both hopefully are successful, and but at the same time I get to work on like real estate deals that are crazy, and um trying to figure out where Mouth Media is going is crazy, and it's just a lot of fun. um how much do you think is kind of giving yourself permission to be public about it? That's one of the things I was wondering. um
Huge. It's actually huge. And it's what, I don't know. I mean, when I opened my practice about a year ago. Maybe even a year to the day, to be quite honest. It was
just show people what the practice
oh, thank you. There's my law practice. Now, if anyone goes to my website, I don't expect you to, or I'm not asking you to. It's a little goofy. It's like goofy on purpose. My title on LinkedIn is something like Manic Pixie Dream Lawyer, and I was thinking I change it to something else stupid, because so much of the legal profession is people really worried about hoarding their prestige points and being seen in a certain light and maybe not being authentic to who they are. And I think it's one of the reasons why lawyers have like an incredibly high mental illness rate and alcoholism rate and suicide rate, to be quite honest. Because
the fact that there's an entire division of the bar devoted to that in every jurisdiction is kind of telling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just realized I'm a lot more effective when I have clients who know who I am and who are either familiar with me, because I only work in one industry now, but who hire me either despite or because of my background and personality, rather than pretending I'm somebody I'm not. So, and that can stack all the way up to, I was at a law firm called Cravath, Swaine and Moore. According to some people, the premier law firm in the world. There's 2, maybe 3 that sort of fight over that title. It would be acceptable at a place like that to say, oh, I'm on the board of an organization. I donate money. I really wish I had more time to donate to the causes, but here's an email. Please donate some money. My other lawyer friend. It wouldn't be acceptable to say, I founded this organization, or I am taking a couple of days off to produce a play for this organization, or, I am going upstate all next week to hang out at my motel with the world's greatest Cajun dance accordionist, because I miss him. People would say, well, you're clearly not a good lawyer if you're doing all these crazy things. So getting to a place where, and maybe this is being a little bit more advanced in your career as well, and having something, to point to say, yeah, well, here's 3 people who'll tell you I'm a good lawyer, and I'm not going to hide the fact that I'm hanging out with the Cajun dance accordionist this weekend.
So I joined a group on Facebook that's the film funding group, and it was started by a woman who went to film school, but she had no idea how to do the business side of getting films made. And so she created a Facebook group and was just trying to learn from that space. And it's got, I think, about 7,000 people in it. And there are frequently these posts from people who are so obviously unqualified, but will not admit it. And it's this massive barrier to learning, where they want to jump in and say, well, I'm a writer, producer, director, editor. And then they don't have an Internet Movie Database page.
Right.
And I mean, sure, the independent film world doesn't always end up on Internet Movie Database, but then you ask them for a link to their films, and they say, just go look at my Facebook page. And there's nothing there but little clips, and it's like, you shot this with the consumer video camera and didn't finish it, really obviously didn't finish it.
Right.
And I think part of what you're talking about with people wanting to stay inside of this mask of professionalism, of being on task, it's related to that in some way, where people want to be in the entertainment business, but they don't know where to start, so they label themselves as being at the top, which is ridiculous, and then they have trouble getting in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm all for fake it until you make it, for sure.
Yeah.
But there's a way to fake it so hard that you don't make it, right? That you're
exactly.
I don't know. I've got a friend who's a brilliant painter. He spent most of 90s and 2000s painting on cereal boxes, and he'd have shows in bars. He wasn't plugged into the art school world, the money donor world, everything else. He had some, would never really present himself as anything other than what he was, for sure, or what he was doing. He was doing great work. But it wasn't until he started making hand-drawn animations on his phone. He doesn't even have really good editing software of his art, and putting it on Instagram, that he has this huge following now, and he doesn't pretend that he is someone who is being shown at galleries in Chelsea, or pretend, in young artist shows or whatever. He says, I make crazy ass videos on the internet. If you'd like a crazy ass video on the internet, hit me up. Or look at my feed or whatever. And he's done great, because there is more of a context for what he does, for this sort of fast, primal art, for sure, than there used to be. So he's lucky there, but also he's not saying he's anything other than he is. So I was thinking about these people you're describing who have little clips of unfinished things on the internet. Say you do that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Really cool videos with a commercial camera. Like, you should check them out. They're great. I want to talk to that person immediately.
Yeah.
Over a drink at a film meetup, rather than someone telling me, oh, well, I'm under consideration for several festivals, and the same damn thing as anyone else. And then you find it was A, boring, and B, untrue. I want to hang out with the interesting, honest person.
Yeah.
I've seen it in small business owners too, where like you're not honest that it's a small business, and that hits too in the same way. Like there's things you need to be doing because it's a small business, and you're not, because you are presenting yourself as this like big CEO, tech CEO thing. Right. So yeah, and
people like small businesses. Like,
you're proud of it.
The spec is the thing you're ashamed of. Might actually, if you make some space for it and think about it, and understand that maybe it could be seen as a positive, it likely is. You can turn almost anything into a positive. I mean, so I've been doing a theater event company series, something, I don't even know what it's called, but a not-for-profit theater company I helped start back in the late 90s, called the 24-Hour Plays. And it was based on scarcity, right? And this is, we're doing a show in LA at the Guild Theaters on March 18th. So that was the link to buy tickets for it. The organization's now been 28 years. I've been involved for 26 years and helped turn into a real company. It was born from scarcity. It was born from the fact that we couldn't afford to rent a theater. But every theater is dark on a Monday night, and no one else was doing anything with it. So people just give it to us. 24-hour plays were, okay, how can you conceive, write, rehearse, and stage 6 short plays in 24 hours? Well, you got to break them up. You got to do 6 short ones with 6 actors and 6 casts and 6 directors. Now it's a global phenomenon. We're on Broadway once a year. We've been in London. We've had giant stars. Our star eras ebb and wane. We're not all about the stars necessarily, but it was figuring out that we are people who have a theater for 24 hours. We're not going to pretend we're something we're not. Once I remember my uncle, who was an actor, said to me, well, who is this for? Is it for the audience or for the people doing it? And I was like, well, screw you, Uncle Taylor. It's for the audience. This is real theater. And it is real theater. It's beautiful. But it is also for the people doing it. And it took many years to realize that one of the strengths of this organization, and one reason we can raise money for what we do, rather than we used to partner with other charities and raise money for the other charities, because we got to do our cool show. We didn't need the money. We didn't necessarily pay actors at one time. Things have changed. But we realized that part of what we do is we create creative communities. We can go to a place like LA that does, there's great theater in LA, don't get me wrong, but the theater community, no one's going to argue, is as strong as it is in New York. So we can parachute into LA for a week, get the people together that we've been talking to for months in a 24-hour period, do a play. You have all these movie actors who have now been in a play together and who have, created a creative community. They're going to call each other up when they want to do some crazy theater next time. They have some time off from their shooting schedules. We do a program for young artists in New York. It's a national program. We call it Nationals, where we bring people through a week of free intensives and workshops, and at the end they do the 24-hour plays. But the whole point is they did the 24-hour plays with these people. They're all new in New York. Suddenly you've got 40 best friends. We used to run away from and in fact, Ian McKellen once came to a show, and I asked him afterwards, I said, "What do you think?" "Oh, it was great, mate. It was brilliant." I said, "Well, am I lagging?"
I think Rob is lagging.
Okay. So anyway, Sir Ian McKellen says, "Oh, it's great, mate. It was brilliant." We're drinking a beer in the bar underneath the theater in London. I mean, a high point of my life. And I said, "Well, would you consider doing it sometime?" And this was a very star-studded show. It wasn't a huge, it was a big swing because of Sir Ian McKellen, but it wasn't a big swing to be asking celebrities to do that. And he said, "Not on your chance, not on your life, not a chance." I said, "What?" And he said, "Well," I said, "Why not?" He said, "Complete waste of time, pointless." Which is still on our program. Every time we do a show, we have Billy Crudup saying, "Remind you of why you fell in love with theater in the first place," and Sir McKellen saying, "A pointless waste of time." But so we didn't run away from the fact that it is an exercise for the participants as much as it is theater for the audience. And in doing that, we figured out who we are, and we figured out how we can write grants, and we figured out what we were writing these grants for, and kind of became a bigger company, and a company that's going to like last through time because of it. Figure out when you don't really need to fake it, when your weaknesses are actually your strengths.
Yeah. Actually, I think people who front when they come into something like that often do it to their own detriment because they're hiding their actual strengths because they don't know what their strengths are.
Yeah.
So they try to present strength, but they don't know which one to put forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's tough. What to tell somebody? How to get over that? Like, be 50 years old and have learned and be in therapy and have learned yourself a little bit. Like, that's not great advice to tell somebody who's 21.
Yeah.
Have all the fucking privileges that one can have in America. Like, that's not great advice to tell somebody who doesn't have them. But I think anybody can give themselves a break. Anybody can realize they're good enough. There is something they're fucking great at, and somebody's going to recognize that. I mean, how many? We're going on at least a decade of knowing each other. How many people did we meet during this month that we met each other, especially during the go-go days of early podcasting? But we saw something really, kindred spirits in each other.
Yeah, I mean, we met at LA Podfest, right?
Yeah.
And it was a bunch of people at the hotel where they originally hosted the Oscars, which was cool.
Very haunted hotel, as I recall.
Yeah. And where a lot of movies are shot that you think were shot in New York because that hotel looks like a New York hotel.
Yeah.
But then we went up and there was a hotel nearby, and we were up, it was an office building where the law office was, and we were out on the terrace, and there were so many creative people, just ridiculously creative people in that space. It was fascinating to just kind of wander around and bump into people. And what do you do? What are you working on? I'm building the universe.
Yeah, there were Dave Anthony, the comedian, actually hosted that, right, or put it together. The festival doesn't exist anymore, but we there weren't a lot of people doing the kind of industry focused business podcasts that you guys were doing there. There was a lot of aspiring podcasters there. There was true crime. There were comedy people there, and there was definitely zero lawyers there. And I kept, it's even worse for me. I sometimes go to like public media type conferences, and people are like, "Why are you here? No one here can afford a lawyer. Like, really? What are you doing?" And sometimes like, I'm a fan in this business write-off. Don't worry about it. Inevitably, those people who ask me like, "Why are you doing here? What are you doing here? No one can afford a lawyer." They call me about 9 months later. Okay, I think I need a lawyer. Someone did me the great disservice of offering me a job or a contract, and now I need a lawyer.
Yeah, you can't not afford a lawyer.
No, that's true. But there's certain there definitely corners of every industry that are defined by scarcity. And again, I come from theater, so I feel like I can speak to that with some authority. There's an old joke that says, "How do you make an actor miserable? You give them a job." There was definitely a time when there were a lot of miserable public media people making beautiful personal audio essays, that were bought and paid for by whatever their local NPR station was, and who didn't quite understand them. And then there were people so happy and having such a good time at smaller scale individual owner business podcast festivals, like the kind of things we went to, and people who were recording shows about baseball cards in their basement, or horse breeding in a trailer, and we're having a great time, and we're paying for things themselves and owned everything, and expressing their creativity. And I think those people, the second group I'm talking about, the podcast movement people, the podcast fest people, all these things, were able to express their lateral and forced to express their lateral thinking and their just being lateral people, because they had to run businesses and create interesting content and do everything at once. Whereas then you had these really earnest, artistically gifted lateral thinkers stuck working for public radio stations. It always that has changed. As more and more public radio people get into podcasting, you realize, I don't actually have to work for a company. I can do this on my own. They've joined the rest of us, which is cool.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think about musicians. When you talk to a musician, it's like, well, I run this studio and I have this other thing and I'm in these 3 bands, and it becomes like it's the like thing that they're living out is the thing that they get to do, that's the end goal, and everything else kind of helps them there.
Right.
And if your passion is, being on mic and talking, and there's like 8 jobs in your area and you don't have one of those 8, then yeah, this is the way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that for a while I worked in not-for-profit theater, right? As I did 24-hour plays was my side hustle. And then I was like managing director of a small not-for-profit. I realized the next step up, and this is New York City. I made not a lot of money. I had great, after great fighting and fundraising, we had benefits for the first time. This was pre-Obamacare, and was not going to be enough to start money to start a family on. And I realized there were only 8 jobs better than mine in the not-for-profit theater in all of New York City, and I knew who had those 8 jobs, and they weren't going anywhere anytime soon. And to tell you the truth, I think all 8 are still in their positions. Which is why I went to law school. I was like, what am I good at? I'm good at theater and I'm good at standardized tests. All right, how can I monetize being good at standardized tests?
A brilliant trial attorney is just an actor. I think when I was in the Southern District as a fellow for a little bit, and the judge was telling us about some of the attorneys, and she was like, "This guy, he's dyslexic. He can't read any of the words in front of him, and he is going to get up there and he is going to answer all of the questions, and you will see him turn to the pages and point at the pages as if he was telling, but he's memorized it all. And sure enough, he got up there, he would turn it, he would point, all acting.
He is probably the most famous trial. If I'm thinking the right person, it's the most famous trial attorney in America, right? I'll say it. I don't give a damn. It's David Boyce.
Yep.
The founder of Boyce Schiller, one of the most famous partners at Cravath, right before I was there. Yeah, absolutely. His assistants carries binders for him, and they're going through the binders. It takes a lot of support to when you think a little differently. When your brain's wired a little differently. So something I've had to learn over the years too. But yeah, he's a genius. And think of how many of the most important court cases of the past 25 years he's argued. My dad was the same way. He was an aspiring actor in New York. He's profoundly dyslexic, so he had to memorize everything that he did, which made it really tough to be a method actor when they were expecting you to improv and do all those things. But yeah. I did want, you mentioned musicians. It's kind of a good segue to the other thing I'm working on that I'm really excited about. Thank you. Which is a bluegrass festival. It's been going on since about 2016 in the Hudson Valley. It's called the Old Tone Festival, and it didn't quite make it through, the first few years of the pandemic as a for-profit organization. So we have restarted it as a not-for-profit, and realizing what an amazing thing that is, not only for the small towns in the Hudson Valley near where this 3-day festival attracts maybe 2,000 people at its biggest, but also for bluegrass and old time and traditional musicians like all over the country. It creates communities. It gives people a way to participate. There's a lot of dance lessons, a lot of musicians who just like stroll through the campground, the camping areas, and play music with like fans, and musicians trading songs together. So we realized that it had to come back. I've got some experience in not-for-profit, so I'm helping reform it. But we're expanding it and adding in traditional Latino music for the first time. So instead of an American Roots Festival, it's a North American Roots Festival. Mm-hmm. And we think it's going to be absolutely amazing. It's going to be amazing anyway, but these changes, once the greatest living Cajun accordion player, Jesse LeJay, by the way, he's a real person. I'll give him a shout out. Starts to play with the greatest mariachi accordion player, and trading licks. That's going to be something, and that's going to change, a local community. It's going to change an artistic community. Who knows? But anyway, back to musicians. Yeah, it's a low cost of entry, right? You got to buy an instrument and find somebody to teach you. Podcasting is a really low cost of entry. Radio is a high cost of entry. You need a lot of equipment. Film and television, goes up and down, but certainly it's a higher cost of entry than everything I've done. Theater, again, if you can find a dark Monday night, low cost of entry. There may be something in there that allows you to make mistakes and figure out what you're good at and figure out when you're bad at when that cost of entry is lower. I don't know.
Yeah. I love that. When you're looking at the downside, sorry, I'm getting an echo on my thing, which bothers me.
You sound fine to me.
What else does? So it's when you have cycles and your brain thinks laterally, when you're in that multilateral space and you start to see down cycles, jump on it because there's opportunities in that. So I'm thinking like when we started our art gallery, it was 2008. The reason we started the gallery was we saw this, like, number one, you could do it online. We could do, digital. So it was easy to do on that side. But all of this vacant space meant that we could have shows and we could have gallery spaces that normally would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So our first show was in a venue called the Loading Dock, where these developers had realized that the zoning requirements of New York made it so they could never have a restaurant. but they could have an art gallery, and they could bolt a food truck to the loading dock of their building and have a taco truck. And if people happen to want to go into the gallery space and sit down and eat, that's fine. And so we were the fiction of the gallery on the walls around them. And then that turned into, I think we had 7 galleries. Not only did we not pay for the spaces, but we got paid for some of the spaces. And that's that side thing. And now I'm a gallery owner, but I mean, that I have no idea how this happened. In the same way, they're like, oh, now I have a theater company. And
there's something, there's a lot of people who are justly over the grind economy and having to hustle and everything else. Yeah, that is true. And I certainly wish this country supported the arts better. But when you find an opportunity like that, grab it. I mean, you as a gallery owner, I'm sure the restaurants are our business, do what you need to do in restaurants too, but I just have a soft spot for the arts and for stories like that. I completely forgot that this summer, I don't think you guys know about this, I became a stage manager for performance art. I'd never done that before. I just kind of felt, I've got a buddy who's an executive at L'Oreal and a really avant-garde sculptor. And he also is involved in performance art and circus art. Specifically, he rolls around in giant steel wheels.
Yeah.
There's like maybe 5 people in New York who do it, and not that many people in America. And he's one of the best. He got me involved in this group that performs on rooftops in Greenpoint. It's the rooftops of Broadway stages, giant sound stage where they do lots of network shows. Acres and acres and acres of real estate just sitting there. And the owners of Broadway stages, wanted to bring in some arts components, probably a tax break. I don't know. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. They met a painter and gave her some big gallery space with huge ceilings that she can create big work in. And then she started looking out the window and said, "Well, can I use the roofs?" And now she performs, from May through October, this beautiful series with the New York, with Manhattan skyline in the background, and also giant piles of trash because it's right at the end of Greenport on Greenpoint on Newtown Creek. And she's been there for, I don't know, over a decade now. And it's the same thing, looking for the gaps like you did with your art gallery. It's great.
Yeah.
There's an interesting book by Cory Doctorow called Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom. Have you read that one?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have not.
Yeah.
He describes a world that's post-scarcity and where your consciousness can be uploaded to a computer and stored for a while if you want to take a break, that sort of thing. But everything in the world that's kind of interesting is run by ad hocs, which are just kind of collectives of people. So, Disneyland is no longer a corporation in this world. It's just been taken over by a group of people who want to run Disneyland. And I see that as a very positive thing. but they have to be in the society where it's post-scarcity, where being able to feed yourself isn't a question so much because we figured things out, and we're not there yet. And I think that's a detriment to many artists because we'd rather live in that world and just create to create rather than be here in this space where we have to fight to be able to create things that are good for people.
Yeah, 100%, which is a funny thing about me because I've just described all these artistic things I'm doing. None of them involve me being on stage. None of them involve, me playing bluegrass on stage. I play a little banjo. I'm a decent actor. But when I started with the 24-hour plays, I wrote for them, I directed for them, I acted for them. I was okay at all those. I wasn't bad. But I was asked to produce, so it must not have been great. And as soon as I started doing that, I realized this I'm really good at. And most people are shitty at it because most people really want to be actors and they're willing to produce something so that they can eventually cast themselves in things, or they're willing to start a theater company to produce the work that they're writing or whatever. I legitimately enjoy finding the rooftop, bolting on the taco truck, and sneaking into the theater on a Monday night, that is the art for me. Part of me getting to do what I enjoy helps other people doing it to do exactly what you described, Charles. For the people who that is nothing but a chore. They want to just make their art. When I can team up with somebody like that, we do great work. And it's probably, now that I think about it, a through line to what I do as a lawyer too. I'm perfectly happy to draw up the contract or give the advice. I'm going to stop now because it sounds like I'm advertising my services. I'm not. I'm just saying I get a charge from doing that. Other people get a charge from building businesses. It's nice to team up.
Yeah.
I love structures. I don't love operating them,
Yeah.
but I love figuring them out and handing them off to people who love operating them.
Absolutely.
I mean, just like being an advisor is always more interesting for me because it's like, oh, here's how you take the thing you're struggling with and do it. And then I never have to think about it again.
Exactly. You get to do the fun part.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to get the engine running. I don't want to necessarily stand there and watch the engine run for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and there's ways to do. We can laugh about it, but the way to do that, there's a couple ways to do it. One is to be an advisor, right? One way is to be a consultant. One way is to be an attorney. And the other way is to partner with communities of people, ad hocs, that have different strengths, that have trust in each other, that can pick each other up when you're feeling a little burnt out, or you don't want to be as involved, or you're real sick of watching this engine run. And I've been really lucky. Again, 24 Hour Plays has been the three founders. None of us are involved in the day-to-day anymore. In fact, I'm the only one even on the board right now. But we've managed to build an organization that lasts by handing things off really slowly to people who are kindred spirits, and can provide way different kinds of strengths, and who don't, in this case, right? There's no big money in not-for-profit theater. They can also say, yeah, Lindsay's not great at sending out an appeal. Oh, this is a great example. They used to do the 24 days of 24 hours, right? Which was in April, I guess. So April 24th would be involved. And they create social media assets for us every day to put out. And within 24 days, board members were supposed to raise this amount of money. I didn't do that. What I did was on the last day, put out every time a weepy post saying, this organization is so important to me. It's only later as I sort of came out as being neurodivergent, having ADHD. It's like, I've got ADHD. I was supposed to do this. I put it off. It's so hard to raise money. I get the deadline's in 24 hours. Kick in if you can. I would certainly appreciate it. If you've ever done theater with me or given you some free legal advice or whatever. And I'm not gonna sprain my elbow, patting myself on the back, but they always said I was the biggest fundraiser of it. And so now they're not doing 24 days; they're doing 24 hours to 24-hour plays, because nobody in this particular group was good at that or had those kind of networks or whatever else. We just kind of played to our strengths. And we do have people out there who can create assets every day and can keep the engine running and can watch the engine run and everything else. And having a big enough group of like-minded people to work together is, I think, kind of the dream.
Yeah. Something Rob and I have talked about a couple times is how expensive is the money you're getting? Like, if you take money from a government grant, there are all these reporting requirements that are going to bog you down for months on, okay, yeah, we got the money, but we have to tell them what we did with it at so many steps of the process that it becomes burdensome to the point where maybe you shouldn't have started a nonprofit. Maybe you should have just gone with a for-profit business. And the other thing with the filmmakers and the producing group, they often are looking for like an angel investor to put in $25,000. where they're in a group with 7,000 people, and there's all these other Facebook groups for people who are interested in art. Why don't you just pre-sell the movie, put together some proof of concept, get it out there, sell 25,000 tickets basically, and go make the movie with double the money that you were going to get from the investors. And then you're not burdened with someone who's never been involved in making a movie before giving you money and being nervous for 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, you're a multilateral thinker. I mean,
Yeah.
A lot of people want to make movies who I think a few minutes ago you claimed to be this pure artist. But you also, I knew exactly where you were going with it when you said the word 7,000 people. It's like, all right, I know Charles. I know the things he started in the past. I know exactly what he was thinking. That's brilliant. It's funny. A project I've been asked to work on recently is with some indie filmmakers who, I've talked to you guys about this a bunch. My favorite thing about podcasting is the low barrier to entry, right? There are no gatekeepers, or very, very few. I mean, I've been a bit gatekeeper in different positions before, but
the audience is your gatekeepers.
Yeah. You don't need Sirius XM to give you money to make a podcast. You might like them to, you don't need Stitcher to promote your show. You might like them to. But
honestly, you don't even need an audience always to be successful with the show.
But that's something we've done in not-for-profits too, is define success a little differently. Do we define success about how many tickets we sell to a theater, or do we define success at how many cohorts of these young artists that we bring through, every year, who have gone on to, we had our first Oscar winner this year or last year. So at any rate, the client asked me. They said, we made indie films. We've done well making indie films. We've done all right making indie films. We have people who like to invest in our indie films. We would like them to be able to invest in a seasonal podcast. How does that work? And my first reaction was, well, fuck you. Don't ruin my beautiful business by bringing in indie. I don't want it to look like a film business. That's what I'm trying to avoid. Podcasting is a special, little snowflake of an industry. But the more I thought about it, the more I really liked the idea that a whole lot of people, instead of going to gatekeepers who want to make things, in this case, audio fiction, which is more expensive, can get that money on their own from people willing to give it to them because they're coming over from this other industry. We just have to figure out now how to take the standards that indie film investors are used to, and the ways of getting recouped, and make that make sense in podcasts where there's many seasons and you can't really separate out the strength of one season from the next because of the way we report.
And you want to do it without just selling mattresses.
Yeah. And it was great. It was really fun. And I've got something that, I was a entertainment lawyer before I was just a podcast lawyer. I did more than just podcasting, but I really knew theater and podcasting and litigation the best. I did not want to sell myself as, I know everything about indie film finance, but my clients did. And being able to put our heads together and come up with this funding model, I don't think it, it's brand new. I don't think it exists yet. And that's one of my favorite things. I like doing that as much as I do the Bluegrass Festival and the fact that I get to fly out to LA to see this theater company I started perform, on the West Coast in a few weeks.
So that feeling you have with theater and podcasting is what I'm getting right now with real estate, where I'm with Christie's as a real estate salesperson right now. And my team of 3 people is so different than anybody who's ever worked for Christie's that every single deal we've had to rewrite all the legal paperwork for. And it's been amazing because it's like everybody else is selling a house to somebody and we come in and we're like, we're going to sell 50 houses over 2 years for this guy. Like, how do we pay for that? We're going to do $300 million in deals over 6 years in 4 different jurisdictions. And it's so much fun to figure it out, for me at least. Like it's amazing.
I mean, luckily you also know a good lawyer because you're a lateral person.
It took me finding a team where the broker was a good lawyer, where we could come and we could present exactly what we wanted to have happen. And I could talk through like how my brain had structured it, and then they got it.
Right.
What didn't work was like somebody who was in real estate.
Yeah. But I mean, are they
twice before?
Right. So the broker's an actual lawyer like you, or
yeah.
Mind.
We're lucky. Our broker is also the head legal at Rebney,
cool.
Which is like the leading. So it's like she's defining the standards of the industry,
right.
And that's the person who has our back. But we can go out and do like crazy deals because of that. But yeah,
I don't understand how creative and business can be in general, but also like knowing psychology makes it sound like you're trying to trick people with sales. That's not what I mean, but like, I don't know. So the person I co-founded the 24-hour plays with, the person who actually came up with the idea, because I only came along a couple of years later, is a real estate broker now. She's been doing it. She ran the Dramatists Guild and was a real estate broker. She's been doing and founded the 24-hour plays. That's, a lateral person as well. And out of all of them, one she's still doing is real estate. And it's not because it makes her money, but it's also because she loves doing it, because for her, it's all about matching a person up with a place and kind of getting to know them and the emotional, intelligence involved in all that. So it's a little different from what you do. What you do is kind of a little bit more grand scale of taking hard problems and breaking them up.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
My favorite one right now is I have this castle, and we're trying to figure out the part of it that exploded during the Manhattan Project. What was the chemical? Like that's fun,
you were telling me before we started recording about the castle specifically. Everyone's curious.
Yes.
Where are they? Are these like American reproductions of castles, or are these in Europe?
So they started working in France with like a castle out there. The one that I'm exploring out here is the old Abercrombie estate. So it was a 300-acre castle complex type thing.
Right.
And it's, for 40 years or so, it's just been derelict. But it like the walls still stand because it was built out of structural steel and stone. But like I said, one half of it exploded during the Manhattan Project and the rest of it burned 2 years ago. So it's like, it's a shell, but it's a really interesting, important shell.
And if you find the right person, they're going to love it. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. And like you can just build off of that. And
But a normal real estate developer would come in and want to split it into parcels and do suburban tract home kind of things with it. And
that's what I'm
preserve it, which the community would reject. The community wouldn't allow that. So you're using your multilateral thinking to exploit an opportunity where otherwise no one would have an opportunity.
Right. Yeah. So what's actually happened is the last 3 owners or 2 owners or however many, that's exactly what they were doing. It's 54 acres. We can get, 108 houses on that. And the community is like, we can't support that. We can't even deliver the electricity. We can't, that's not going to happen. The roads are unsafe. And so it's been bought and sold and just has sat because no one has managed to figure it out. And then we're coming in saying and this is the number of days we want it open to the public. And here is the preservation plan. It's like a whole different, and it's fun. Just the fact that this guy built stone cabins for his kids to camp in, scattered throughout, and no one knows where they all are. That's amazing.
Oh my God.
That's really fun.
So where is this place, and how harshly do you deal with trespassers? Because I want to see it, but I want to be by myself.
Very, very harshly. So they had to install cameras because of it. I'll send you photos.
Very cool. Yeah, I drove past. I don't know. Speaking of multilateral thinkers, there is in Rhinebeck, New York, I think. It's upstate, sort of shallow upstate. Is the gatehouse to someone's mansion, right? It's a castle. It was brought stone by stone, I believe, from somewhere in Europe, where Timothy Leary did acid for the first time, and conducted his acid. I don't think they were quite experiments, but publicized acid and brought people in to do early acid test.
Kool-Aid acid test.
Yeah, it's right there, and what for a bigger and bigger swath of America all the time. What a historical place that is,
As we get back into that world, it's kind of interesting, right? Like it's kind of full circle where. Yep. In high school, one of the coolest moments I ever had was I got to sit on the original Further bus, not the one at the Smithsonian, which is not the original, but the original that they hid on the farm, and with Ken Kesey, because they parked it on his, and it was like one of those like, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened. So he was showing us old movies from that time, and it's a different world. And now we're kind of recreating it a little bit as things get legalized and schedules get changed. And
and I think as society is becoming less buttoned down, maybe loosening up. Like, I don't want to say loosening up in a way that sounds derogatory at all. Changing, evolving. I just think I would have never been allowed to do anything other than wear a black turtleneck and be in the theater, or wear a coat and tie and be a lawyer, or probably more likely what I moved to New York doing is just my money job, as I was trying to do theater on the side, wear a polo shirt and be an IT guy. Our grandparents had one job, their whole lives.
I think as a kid, I got into my most interesting and comfortable situations because I had nervous breakdowns and just stopped functioning within the system, and it would force a change. And I don't think that ends as well for many people. A lot of people who are on the autism spectrum or have ADHD or have both, that getting to situations where they can perform at their best is stressful and dangerous. It can really put you in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
My grandma was she was not heterosexual at a time when that was not okay, and she was hiding it by marrying my grandpa. And 9 months in, she was just like, I just can't. And she moved to Germany, joined the OSS, was stationed in East Germany, and ran extradition routes for the spies across the wall. And that was where she belonged. Like, it was brutal for my mom and her upbringing. They were estranged for many years, but that was what she had to do. And it was like, looking back on it, unfortunately she passed before we could get a lot of the stories out of her, but she did that until her lover was shot next to her while they were driving a Jeep. And then she couldn't handle that and became a vacuum salesman. So, but it's like, you look at these like historical moments, that's what it took back then, though. Like, that amount of uprooting was what was necessary. And now it's not as brutal.
I mean, I think there's a lot of, I think people look, if I've got a certain amount of background stress and trauma just because someone made me go to a nice office at a nice law firm and gave me money for it. Like, imagine, all the people who, because they've been marginalized by society for whatever reason, are just now I am just now becoming aware of the fact that you know, that just so many people are starting to hear like, yeah, it fucking sucks, and it's okay. It's okay that you felt that you've had panic attacks and breakdowns, and it's okay that you've had, you know, these problems. That is the correct view to what's been done to you, or the context in which you've found yourself. Like, yeah, it absolutely sucks. And I don't know. I think this loosening has a long way to go, but hopefully is you know, we're what we've been sort of talking about, what you guys have been really singing the gospel of multilateral thinking is like one tip of that iceberg, you know.
Well, we're coming up on the end of the hour, and Rob's house will get noisy because the kids come home. So we should kind of stop here. Anybody who's watching and wants to engage with us a bit more, we're planning another conference coming up. So go to lateralpeople.com and sign up for the mailing list so that we can let you know when we're doing another conference. Lindsay, thank you so much for your time and fascinating conversation today.
I think it was probably just a lot of off the cuff friends hanging out, and I don't know how useful any of it was for anybody, but I'm honored to be asked and love doing it. So thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm glad we put that line in the script that you're reading from. So.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I guess we don't have time to do the rest of it. There was the dance number and the song. We can maybe next time.
Yeah, we'll record that and release it later.
Your script was too long, guys. It's your fault.
Oh, yeah. You've got the wrong credit under your name. It's supposed to say Lindsay Buckingham, right?
All right, guys.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.